Hello everybody and welcome to the video. In this video, we're going to go over how to install Cinemachine, adding Cinemachine cameras here, and setting up a follow script for the player so that the camera will follow the player, as you can see here. Then we're also going to prevent the player from moving back to the left so they can no longer go there, and they can only move to the right with the camera following them once they hit the halfway screen. We'll also add in some additional jumps, stuff like that here for the world, but nothing too much. So we'll go ahead and we'll get started. First off, we're going to want to go ahead and install Cinemachine. To do that, we're going to go over to Window, and then we're going to go down to Package Manager. Here, we're going to make sure that the Unity registry is selected, and we'll go ahead and we will search for Cinema. We can select Cinemachine and click on Install. Once this is installed, we can go ahead and close out of the window. Now we'll go ahead and we'll add this camera to our scene. So we'll right click and we'll go down to Cinemachine and 2D camera. And I'm going to rename mine Follow Camera. If yours loaded a little off like mine, I'm not exactly sure what causes that. However, you can come in here and underneath Lens and Ortho Size, you can go ahead and change this back to 5 is what it should be at. And then also it came in off-centered here for some reason as well. So I'm going to go ahead and change my position back to 0, 0, and it was at -10 before. You'd have to change yours back to whatever it was to get yours to line back up there. And then one other thing that we're going to do in here, so don't forget, is with this body here, you'll see the little exclamation point. We can actually change this from framing transposer to do nothing. We're going to be writing our script here to set up our camera. Next, we're going to want to make our camera follow us when we move past the halfway mark on the screen. And to get this to work how we want it to, we're going to go ahead and create a script. So I'll head into my scripts folder, right click and create a new script. I'm going to name this one Follow Player. I'm going to start off here by deleting these two items at the top, and then also the start method and the update comment, as we don't need those. So now at the top here, we're going to need to get some references to a couple of things, and I'm going to use serialized fields. The first one that we're going to do is going to be type of transform, and this is going to be our player's transform. So I will name it as such. The next one is going to be another serialized field, and this one is going to be a float, and this is going to be our follow speed, so how fast we want the camera to follow us. I'm going to set this by default to 5F, and we'll need one more serialized field here. This one's also going to be a float, and this one I'm going to call screen threshold, and I'm going to set this one equal to 0.5F. So this is going to be the percentage of the screen width that we're going to use to trigger the camera movement. So we want it to go at 0.5. So it's going to be at the halfway mark there, because it'll go from 0 to 1. So the first thing that we're going to need to do here in update is we're going to need to calculate the screen position of the player. So for this, we're going to do a vector 3, and I'm going to call this one the player screen position, or POS. Set that equal to our camera main, and then this is going to be .world to viewport point. And then in here, we're going to pass in the player transform .position. And then now we're going to need to set up an if statement here, and this if statement is going to check if the player is moving to the right and if they are past the halfway mark on the screen. So we'll say if the player screen position .x is greater than our screen threshold that we set, and the player transform position .x again is greater than transform .position .x. So that's saying if the player is moving to the right and they're past the halfway mark on the screen, then what we'll want to do is we're going to want to calculate the target position for the camera. So this is going to be a vector 3, and I'm going to call this one target position. And that's going to be equal to a new vector 3. And this one, we're going to pass in the player transform .position.x. So we want the X position of the player, and then we're going to do transform .position Y, as we don't want the Y position to change. We only want the camera to move on the X axis. We want it to move with the player on the X axis, but on the Y axis, we just want it to remain wherever it's at on the Y axis, so it's not moving up and down. And then we'll do the same thing for the Z position, as we don't want it to move along the Z axis either. And so now that we have got the target position for the camera, we'll go ahead and we'll move the camera towards that target position. So here we're going to do transform.position, and that's going to end up equal to a vector 3. And then here we're going to use lerp. And then in here, we're going to pass in our, again, transform.position, and then the target position. And then this is going to be our follow speed, and we're going to multiply that by time.delta time. And so for this, what we're inputting in here, if you like hover over lerp here, you'll see that it's going to be the two positions that we are interpolating between. So we're going between our transform.position, which is A there, and then B is going to be the target position, and then the float T is going to be the speed. So once we save that script, we can come back into our editor here and select our follow camera. And then we can go ahead and drag that script in here. And now we'll just have to set up the player transform. So we can go ahead and drag our player into there. So if we come in here and we test this out here, we'll see that the camera isn't following us at first, but if we move past the halfway mark, well, the camera should be following us, but it looks like it's not quite working correctly. So we'll take a look and see what's going on with that. So back in the script here, what I did was I messed up and I typed in the wrong thing. Right here in the if statement, this second part here right after the and, this shouldn't say player screen position. This should actually be the player transform dot position dot x is what we're actually wanting this to be. So now if we make that change and head back into the editor here and try this again, it's not going to move by default, but once we cross that halfway mark there, now it's working properly. So it's going to move with us. Now, obviously we can still move back left. You can see the little character running off the camera there. It's not going to do anything. And what we'll do is we'll want to block the character from moving, off the left side of the screen. But right now, the moving to the right is working correctly. Now that we have the camera following the player to the right, the next thing we want to do is prevent the player from moving to the left here. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and create a new script. I'm going to call this one block player left, since we want to block the player from moving to the left. We'll go ahead and open this up. And then again, I'm going to remove these items here at the top as we don't need them. And I'm going to get rid of start and the comments. And so then at the top here, we're going to go ahead and add in two serialized fields. The first one is going to be of type camera, and I'm going to simply call this one main camera. And then we'll add another one here, and this one is going to be of type float. And I'm going to call this one buffer distance. And I'm going to set this one equal to 1f. And this is going to be used for the buffer distance from the left side of the camera. So how far we want to keep the player from the left-hand side. Now, inside of update here, what we're going to do is we're going to write an if statement. And this is simply going to say if main camera does not equal null. So if we have a main camera. And then in here, what we're going to want to do is we're going to calculate the left side, the boundary position based on the camera's viewpoint. And then we're going to basically clamp the player's position to the left boundary and then update the player's position. So in here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a vector 3, and we'll call this one the left boundary. And that's going to be equal to our main camera, and then dot viewport to world point. And then in here, we're going to do a new vector 3, and then we're going to use 0.5f, and then the main camera dot near clip plane. And I forgot to put an equal sign here. So this is basically changing our viewport into world space. And then down here, we're going to want to do the left boundary dot x position. And we're going to do a plus equals. And then this is going to be the buffer distance. So that's going to apply the buffer distance to the left boundary there. Then after that, we're going to want to clamp the player's position to that left boundary. So this is going to be a vector 3, and we'll simply call it clamped position. And that's going to equal our transform dot position. And then we're going to do clamped position dot x, and we're going to say that's equal to mathf dot max And in here, we're going to do our transform.position.x, a comma, and then we're going to use the left boundary.x as well. So then now after this, all we'll have to do is we're going to have to do the transform.position and set that equal to our clamped position. So back in the editor here, we'll go ahead and we'll add that new script here to the player. And then over here, we need to attach our main camera. And now we should be able to click on play here, and we shouldn't be able to move off of the screen to the left. So it should stop us. You can see that it is stopping us. And we can still move to the right and the camera still follows us. However, we cannot move back to the left. Now, if you wanted to change this buffer distance, you can change that as well here. So depending upon, how large you want it or how small you want it, that's going to change how close your player can get there. I think 1 is decent. Lets the player get close, but maybe we can make it at like 0.5. I think that's pretty good. So what we'll do is we'll make sure we go ahead and you can either change it here or back in the script. And then also for our player, we'll want to make sure we do the override here and apply all of the changes we've made so far to our prefab here. Now, the last thing that we're going to go ahead and do in this video is we're going to adjust the scene a little bit here. So we're going to go up and we're going to start adding in some additional platforms. So what we can do is we can start off by simply clicking on the platform here on the bottom, and we're going to go ahead and press Ctrl D to duplicate that. And then we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move this one over to the right a little bit. This first one's just going to be like maybe a smaller jump, for example, nothing too fancy here. And then I'm going to scroll out and I'm going to duplicate this again. And then maybe this one I'll make a little bit of a bigger jump, for example, here for the player. And we can add in like some moving platforms or something like that the player will have to use to get around. And then maybe we'll do one last one here that's also a little bit longer. And maybe this one will have go up and down, for example, platforms that the player has to jump on to get across. And then this one here, we can have them going like left and right, for example. I mean, you can add more if you'd like, but I'm going to keep this level kind of simple. And then one last thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to want to add the backgrounds here. So you can do this a couple different ways. I'm just going to create an empty here. I'm going to call this one backgrounds. I'm going to make the background that we already have a child of this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, simply Ctrl D to duplicate that. Scroll in a little bit so I can see it, and I'm just going to move these over so that they line up, and if you click off it you can kind of see that a little bit better, but make it look like so. I think that'll look all right. And then I'm just going to continue doing that for the whole little level here. And then you could, if yours doesn't line up exactly, you could obviously add another background if you wanted to. I'm just simply going to move this over a little bit, I think. And then I'm also going to go ahead and just delete these 3 ones right now, as we don't really need these in here anymore. Perfect. So now in the next videos, we're going to go ahead and we'll start adding in and implementing more functionalities. So we'll add in some boxes and stuff that the player can hit, for example, and get some coins maybe, or some power-ups. We'll add in those floating pillars and stuff like that for the levels here, for the player to jump across.